Hey guys, welcome back to K Job's Views. I hope you guys are enjoying the page as much as I am enjoying making it. This review is about a very interesting show, Behind Her Eyes, a British drama on Netflix. But before we get into it, as always, like, comment, subscribe, share, tell someone to tell someone about me. I'm making entertainment so easy. So let's get into Behind Her Eyes. Again, this is a drama on Netflix. It's a British drama. It's 5 episodes. It was either 5 or 6. 5 or 6 episodes. It's a very quick watch. You can watch it in a day. I watched it in, I believe, 2 days. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, so Behind Her Eyes. So Behind Her Eyes is about Louise, Adele, and David. Now, Louise has this beautiful first encounter. She's on the first episode. She goes to a bar to meet a friend. Her friend stands her up essentially, and she meets this guy at the bar, David. They have this beautiful first connection, sparks, beautiful, cool. And he kind of runs off. Like he runs off before a real connection can be made, but it's clear there's that spark, right? The next day she goes to work and she discovers this guy, David, is her new boss. She works at a psychiatry office. She works at a psychiatry office. David is a psychologist, and he's the new psychologist at this small practice of psychology. And she's one of the assistants there. So she turns out, oh my gosh, I was hitting on my new boss. And then also finds out that her new boss is married. He has a whole ass wife named Adele. So Adele basically is a very suspicious wife. So she finds out that there was this initial connection with Louise and starts to befriend her, purposely befriends her. She seems awkward. She seems like there's something going on, possibly David is beating her, or she just seems like a very traumatized wife, like something's going on there, right? So that's kind of what we get into in the first bit of the episode. That's the synopsis, and it goes from there, right? What will Louise do? Is she engage in what's possibly a bad relationship with a married man? Will she continue to be friends with someone who is married to someone she's trying to sleep with, has a crush on, or works with? And by the way, when Adele befriends Louise, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry, it's been a while since I watched the show. But Louise is not aware that Adele is David's wife. Not initially. That happens later on. I'm almost positive that's the way it goes. All right, so that's the synopsis. Now we're going to get into these spoilers. So let's get into these spoilers. If you haven't watched the show and you want to watch the show, or listen to these spoilers, and hopefully I don't give you too much and you still want to watch the show, because I do recommend this show to watch, largely because the ending of it was so just threw me off. All right, so boom, let's get into these spoilers. So Louise, girl, you honestly, whatever happens to you, you had it coming, because you knew the man was married, and regardless of whether British people seem to have this idea that when you're in an unhappy marriage, you should just cheat. I don't know if divorce is just more of a faux pas there than infidelity. But anyways, Louise seems to be content with pushing the to me, she basically seduces her boss, to be completely honest. That's what it felt like to me. But just to back up, Louise does have a son. He's 8 or something like that. He's old enough to be aware, but young enough to be a child. So she has a son, and she's, obviously single. So Louise starts sleeping with David. At some point, she basically starts sleeping with David, largely during the time that her son is on vacation with his father. He's on holiday with his father in France. His father and his new girlfriend. In France. So she starts sleeping with David. At the same time, she continues being friends with Adele, because, I don't know, she just sees a tortured soul that she needs to be friends with. She also is learning things from Adele. Now, Louise suffers from, what's kind of like sleep paralysis, right? She can be I don't want to describe sleep paralysis. I'll try to include a brief description or something at the bottom. But anyway, she suffers from what to me sounds like sleep paralysis, right? And which can be like a waking nightmare for a lot of people. And that's how it's described. She learns from Adele. Adele identifies this trait in Louise early and is like, I can help you with that. And she provides Louise with this journal. This journal is what starts to really complicate, unravel, and change the story in such a I did not see this coming great job. So the journal, as Louise is reading it, helps her control her sleep paralysis, right? That's initially what it kind of is supposed to do. You do this thing where you count your fingers, you say this mantra before you go to sleep. And you have control over the sleep paralysis. You won't feel these waking nightmares that Louise was often suffering. In the course of this journal, though, she also learns this ability that Adele also seems to share, where you can kind of come up out of your body and like travel around, like your psyche sort of like, right? It just kind of moves around and you can see things and visit people and see other things and they can't see you or feel you, but you can like see things and like be a part of everything and all that stuff, right? You leave your body, you can see your body, that whole thing. In the course of this, she's of course still sleeping with David and still befriending Adele. So she starts to suspect that David's a bad guy and like takes action against them. And during this, in the course of reading her reading the journal, we get all these flashbacks. Now, what we're getting flashbacks of is Adele at this recovery center. Now, she was in the recovery center following the death of her parents, and her parents died in a fire that she blames herself for. Why did she blame herself? Because during the fire, she was out there sleep, kind of walking, whatever, sending her psyche somewhere else. She was doing that, right? And had she been in her body, she would have known about the fire. She could have stopped the fire. Boop, boop, boop. The show does a really good job at making us kind of believe, like, well, maybe Adele did start the fire. Like, maybe blah, 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 blah. But then it also does a good job at making us think, well, David was this poor farm boy who lusted after Adele, who I'm sure her family didn't approve of. And then boom, her parents said that she's rich and David is the one she marries. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe David orchestrated this whole thing. The show does a really good job at having us think both ways. Like who's the bad guy in this? While at the same time, for some reason, ignoring the fact that Louise, why don't you just stop fucking or friending people you shouldn't be involved in? You know, so we're pulled in almost 3 different directions in this show, which I think is kind of like a really cool thing, right? So in the course of her learning to sleepwalk and all this stuff through the journal, or psyche walk through the journal from Adele's journal, we also are introduced to this guy named Rob that Adele met at recovery. Rob is a gay guy who is, for lack of a better word, seems obsessed with Adele. Just like, she's such this positive spirit. She's so happy. She's so buoyant. Boop, 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 boop. Now, remind you, I told you at the beginning of this, Adele came off as a troubled, traumatic wife. Hold on to that because her presentation in the journal is entirely different from her presentation throughout the time she's present, you know, with Louise and David and the current marriage and all that stuff. Her presentation in the journal in the past is just so different from her presentation in current day. So Louise is now going on this whole journey of trying to unravel the story between David and Adele, and if David actually killed the parents or Adele's just crazy and she's paranoid and all this other stuff. And she starts unlocking like past incidences with Adele and other women, or thinking David's with other women, or David even being with other women, right? So everything's just getting super duper complicated. David, at the same time, finds out about Adele and Louise and is like done with Adele. He's like, I'm so fucking done with this. I'm so fucking done with this. You know, I'm out. And this is where things get twisty. I don't even know if I can properly describe this part other than to say you really should just watch the show. We get the final journal portion, which actually wasn't even in the journal. But basically, Adele also taught Rob the whole sleepwalking thing because she had to tell him why she believed that her parents' death was her fault, blah, 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 blah. So she shows Rob how to do the whole thing. Rob is on visit to her house for the weekend. This is after they've left recovery. He comes to visit Adele and David for the weekend. And his obsession with Adele, we start to see, is really transferring to an entire intimate obsession with David. Hopefully you see where this is going, because this was the final episode and that's where it went. Basically, him and Adele do a sleepwalking thing to see if they could swap bodies. They do. They're able to swap bodies. However, Adele is unable to move Rob's body because he took some heroin, which was the drug he was in recovery for, before they swap bodies. He did this on purpose because he knew Adele wouldn't be able to move the body. We'll see where this is going. He throws his body into the well, leaves her dead, trapped as Adele in Rob's body, or dies as Adele in Rob's body. Meanwhile, he's now Rob in Adele's body. This is why there's such a stark transformation between the Adele of the past and the Adele of present, because this is not Adele. This is why all of a sudden David falls out of love with Adele, because that's not Adele in the body. But of course he doesn't know that. He thinks it is actually Adele. So as this is revealed, Adele tricks Louise into coming to her house to save her from suicide. In the course of this, Louise thinks, let me jump out of my body. I'm gonna try to wake up Adele, in my little spiritual psyche form. Little does she know, of course, it was a setup. Adele/Rob has left Adele's body and now transferred into Louise's body, leaving Louise with either no body or stuck in Adele, where she has now committed suicide. And so we end with Rob now in Louise's body, taking her place, getting married to David, and the son, Louise's son, who was away on holiday, comes back basically being like, you're not my mom. You're not acting anything like my mom. And she's just like, things change. Fuck me up, right? So that's the show Behind Her Eyes. I basically told you how I felt about it as I was going through it, right? I really enjoyed this show. It wasn't so addictive that it was like I can't stop watching it, which is why I think it took me 2 days, because it's only like essentially 5 hours or something like that for the show. But it was just a good story, and it was just, even though I knew Louise as the protagonist was pissing me off, I needed to know what was going on with this whole Adele David thing, and what if there was something that actually happened to the parents. And then this Rob thing was just so on the side. You don't even really think about it too much until it really starts to become more prevalent. And you're like, well, what the... Well, wait oh my... Yo! Like, it was one of those moments. And so I live for moments like that. So that's why I enjoyed this show. I highly doubt they'll do a season 2. They should not. And yeah, so that's it. So that's Behind Her Eyes, the British drama on Netflix. Please check it out. I enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope I didn't spoil it too much, but that is exactly what's going to happen in the show. And if not, then now you know what the show is, and you can watch it in peace knowing exactly what's going to happen. And that is it. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, and tell someone to share some more. I'll see you guys on the next flick.